Winter wraps the world in a heavy silence. In January, that silence chokes. I could hear Lucas, my nephew, moving slow down the hallway, his boots scuffing the floorboards while snowflakes danced outside the frosted windows of our small house in Burlington, Vermont. 2 weeks ago, he came back from the war carrying scars deeper than the ones etched into his skin. The doctors called it PTSD, told me to be patient, give him time. But the Lucas who walked through my door wasn't the kid I'd helped raise after his parents died. His eyes held secrets he wouldn't share, and at 27 he was a man now, broad-shouldered, quiet, a stranger wearing a familiar face. He looked at me with something new, something that twisted my heart, protective, tender, but shadowed with a hunger I couldn't place. He'd call me Aunt Sarah in a calm, soft voice, but there was a distance, like he wasn't fully there. Sometimes I wondered if he even saw me as his aunt anymore. He treated me gentle, like I was something fragile, precious, a relic he was afraid to break. But there was something else, something deeper, subtler, something that made my skin prickle. That morning, Lucas found me in the kitchen peeling potatoes. His presence was steady, reassuring, but edged with something unsettling. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me in silence. "Need help?" he asked finally, his voice low like a confession whispered in the dark. I shook my head, forced a smile. "I'm good, thanks. Almost done." He didn't move, just kept watching, his gaze heavier than a nephew's should be, focused, curious, like he was seeing me for the first time. I set the dish towel down, met his eyes. "Lucas, how you holding up?" His jaw tightened, then he let out a slow breath. "Better, I guess. It's easier being around you." His words hung heavy, unspoken things clinging to them. I fumbled with the towel, my fingers restless. Was it just gratitude or something else entirely? I wasn't sure. I wanted to know. But the question burned in my chest. That night, we sat together on the couch, a thick quilt draped across our laps as a blizzard raged outside. The fire crackled, filling the silence between us. Lucas had insisted on building it, his hands steady as he stacked the logs. "You remember how Uncle Tom loved winter?" he asked suddenly, his voice soft, like he was pulling a memory from a locked box. I swallowed, fighting the lump in my throat, and nodded. He did. Loved it like you do, though he'd grumble when you begged him to build snow forts. Lucas's eyes drifted somewhere far off, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He made sure they were big enough for both of us. Our forts, something we had to protect. The memory stung bitter and sweet, and I caught my breath, a wave of joy and longing crashing over me. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, whispered, "He loved you." My chest tightened as Lucas turned his gaze, locking onto mine, intense, unyielding. "You don't know how much I love you, Aunt Sarah." I smiled, reached out to squeeze his hand. "I know, Lucas. I love you too." But as our hands touched, I felt the line between aunt and nephew blur, a dangerous shift I couldn't ignore. His need for comfort, my hesitation to pull away, it deepened something between us, something unsteady, like balancing on a wire stretched over an abyss. I wondered if this house could hold the weight of it all. The fire's flickering light cast shadows dancing across the room. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, all I felt was warmth, care, a moment frozen in time, heavy with what we weren't saying. Winter nights always seemed to cloak the world in quiet. Snow kept falling, blanketing the ground in shimmering white. The living room glowed warm from the fire, but unease gnawed at my chest. Lucas had changed, not obvious but impossible to miss. Sometimes he didn't seem to know who I was. Not entirely, but enough to make me pause. I wasn't just his aunt when he lingered too long with his gaze, or spoke to me in a softer tone. At first, his compliments were casual, but they grew sharper, more deliberate. "You look beautiful tonight," he'd said recently, his voice playful, but his eyes burning with something that set me on edge. I'd brushed it off with a smile. "This old sweater, hardly." He'd doubled down serious. "You don't see how incredible you are." I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't ignore the weight in his voice, the sincerity that made it impossible to dismiss. It wasn't the usual thoughtfulness of Lucas. This was too personal, too close, too much like a spark waiting to ignite. One night, the house went dark when the storm knocked out the power. I stumbled into the kitchen, lighting candles, their flickering glow softening the edges of reality. "Got any mulled wine left?" Lucas called from the living room. I smiled to myself, the normalcy of the question a relief. "Think so," I called back. "I'll warm some on the stove." The air filled with the rich scent of cloves and cinnamon, mingling with the faint pine from the wreath on the mantel. Lucas was lighting more candles when I brought the steaming mugs to the living room. For a moment, I felt a strange déjà vu, his broad frame moving through the shadows. At 27, he was so much like his late Uncle Strong, commanding with a quiet charm that pulled you in. I handed him a mug. "Here." He took it, his thanks soft, his fingers brushing mine, sending a warmth through me that had nothing to do with the wine. We sat on the couch, the candlelight bathing his face in a gentle glow. The house felt safe, cocooned, while the storm raged outside. He sipped his drink, then spoke. "Aunt Sarah, do you ever think about the past?" His voice was quiet, thoughtful, like he was reaching for something dangerous. "All the time," I said, tucking my legs under me. "Hard not to, especially this time of year." He stared into his mug. "Yeah, me too." A heavy silence settled, not awkward, but charged, like we were both on the edge of saying something we hadn't dared. "Sometimes I feel like I'm searching for something I'll never find," he said, his voice raw. I frowned, turning to him. "What do you mean?" He paused, jaw tight. "I want someone like you." His eyes met mine, unyielding. Someone kind, strong, but who doesn't see how incredible they are. No one else measures up. His words hit like a weight, the air between us electric. I searched his face for a sign he didn't mean it, but his gaze was steady, burning, and my heart raced. "Lucas?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. His fingers brushed mine on the couch as he leaned closer. "I mean it, Aunt Sarah. You've set the bar too high. I don't think anyone else could make me feel like you do." My heart pounded and I pulled my hand back, my voice trembling. "You're still healing, Lucas. You've been through a lot. It's normal to feel close to people who support you." He shook his head. "It's not just that, it's more. You make me feel seen, safe." His words hung heavy, undeniable. I wanted to brush them off, chalk it up to his pain, but the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he looked at me, told me he meant every word. I stood, grabbing the mugs. "We should get some rest," I said, my hands shaking as I carried them to the kitchen. I could still feel the wine's warmth in my chest. When I returned, Lucas was on the couch, eyes closed, head tipped back against the cushions. I watched him, torn between love and fear. He was my nephew, but sometimes he felt like more. I was scared of that, scared of how the line between us was fading. Yet I couldn't deny our bond, deep, beautiful, and dangerous. I couldn't sleep that night. My thoughts spun a tangle of memories and emotions like a song stuck on repeat. Lucas's words echoed, "You make me feel seen, safe." I couldn't dismiss the sincerity in his voice or the intensity in his eyes. part of me wanted to blame it on his trauma. Another part, quieter, riskier, felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I hated myself for leaning into his words, for savoring the feelings they stirred. But I couldn't stop. Alone in the dark, fingers tracing the edge of my blanket, I wondered what it all meant. What had we become? The line between us was blurring, and I was terrified of where it might lead. Yet I couldn't deny the thrill. By dawn, my unease had twisted into something strange, unexpected, a spark, a need to be seen. I spent longer than usual in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, carefully applying makeup I hadn't touched in months. I chose a fitted sweater, soft and warm, paired with a skirt I hadn't worn in ages. Even my forgotten heels came out of the closet. When I walked downstairs, Lucas was in the kitchen sipping coffee at the counter. The sound of my heels made him turn, and the look on his face made every second of effort worth it. His lips parted, eyes wide, like he'd forgotten how to speak. "Wow, Aunt Sarah, you look amazing," he said, a hint of awe in his voice. I smiled, warmth spreading across my cheeks. "Oh, it's nothing," I said, waving a hand. "Just felt like trying something new today." He kept staring. "It suits you. You look younger." I laughed, brushing it off. "That's a nice way of saying I usually look like an old hag." He shook his head quickly. "No, you're always beautiful." His words were so earnest I couldn't doubt them. And Lucas couldn't seem to take his eyes off me all morning. His boyish, charming smile made my heart skip when our eyes met. He teased lightly, saying I must be trying to impress someone. When I asked who, he shrugged, a mischievous grin spreading. "Maybe me," he said, his voice soft, but his eyes carrying a deeper meaning. I busied myself with chores, hoping movement would ground me, but Lucas stayed close, offering to help, sweeping the floor, folding laundry, setting the table. There was a strange pull to him, and I couldn't ignore the rush every time he brushed past me or reached over me. That afternoon, as I tidied the living room, he came up behind me, his arms wrapping loosely around my shoulders. The gesture was gentle, loving, but it felt different. His warmth against me sent a shiver down my spine, his touch lingering too long. His breath was warm against my ear as he whispered, "You're working too hard. You deserve a break." My heart pounded as I turned to look at him. "And who's gonna do all this if I don't?" I asked, forcing a smile. He grinned so close I could see the gold flecks in his eyes. "Me, of course. This time you just relax and let yourself be spoiled." I patted his arm, laughed softly. "I've been managing fine for a while, Lucas, but you're sweet." "Maybe it's your turn," he said, his voice low, steady. He leaned down, pressed a soft but lingering kiss to my cheek. It was a small gesture, but it stole my breath. That night, as I cooked dinner, Lucas disappeared, briefly returning with a small bouquet of wildflowers and daisies, simple but lovely. His cheeks flushed as he handed them to me. "For you," he said, his voice unusually low. "I just think you deserve them." His thoughtfulness caught me off guard. "You didn't have to, Lucas," I said softly. He cut me off gently. "I wanted to. You do so much for everyone. I want to do something for you." My fingers brushed his as I took the flowers, my voice quiet. "Thank you. They're beautiful. You're beautiful." His gaze was steady, unblinking. I turned away, busying myself with finding a vase, my hands trembling as I arranged the flowers. Their scent filled the room, delicate under my fingers. Lucas's eyes followed me, his presence like a steady flame, comforting but dangerous. That night, his words echoed in my mind as I lay in bed. His gestures kept coming, each one sweeter than I expected. The line between us was fading, and I wasn't sure I had the will or the strength to redraw it. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, gilding the hardwood floors. Soft lilting music drifted from the kitchen, the kind that makes you sway without thinking. I woke, half believing I was dreaming, but the comforting smell of coffee told me otherwise. I slipped on a robe and headed downstairs, the music growing louder. I stopped in the kitchen doorway, caught off guard. Lucas was at the stove, moving with an ease that felt rehearsed, humming low to the music from a small speaker on the counter. A single daisy from his bouquet sat in a tiny vase beside a plate of fresh fruit. My heart cracked open at the sight. "Morning," I said, my voice warm but cautious. His face lit up when he saw me. "Morning, beautiful," he said, his smile unguarded, boyish, yet laced with something deeper. I stepped forward, blushing, shaking my head. "What's all this?" He gestured to the sizzling pan. "Breakfast. Thought you deserved to be spoiled today." "And some music to start the day, right?" he said, nodding at the speaker. I leaned against the counter, watching him, a small smile tugging at my lips. "You're outdoing yourself lately." He glanced over his shoulder, his expression playful. "Maybe I just like seeing you smile." His words hung there, honest, disarming, not a tease, but a truth that settled in my bones. I tried to stay composed, but I couldn't help smiling back. He turned back to the stove. "Breakfast's almost ready." Then he stepped back, wiped his hands on a towel, and held one out to me. But first, I blinked, surprised. What? He kept his hand out. "Dance with me." The music behind him was light, intimate. His eyes sparkled with mischief, his smile irresistible. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his, letting him pull me gently to the center of the room. His fingers were warm, firm, closing around mine. "Lucas," I said, my voice tinged with amusement, "it's too early for this." He spun me slightly, pulling me closer. "Never too early. Besides, you always told me to live in the moment. So here I am." The dance started, clumsy, my steps unsure, his movements bold, but we found a rhythm. I slipped a few times, but he spun me with surprising grace, his laugh infectious. We grinned through the song's chorus, my cheeks aching. I teased, "You're a terrible dancer." He dipped me dramatically, laughing. "Rude. I'm great. You're the one stepping on my toes." "Me?" I said, mock offended, tapping his shoulder. "I'm perfect." His laugh was warm, rich, then he spun me one last time, pulling me close. The playful energy shifted, softening into something private. His hand stayed on my waist, the other resting lightly on my arm. Neither of us moved as the music faded into the background. He leaned in, pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, letting it linger. His arms held me gently but firmly. We stood there swaying slightly, as if the music hadn't stopped. I leaned into him, resting my head against his chest, his steady heartbeat under my ear. "This feels good," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I stayed silent, afraid speaking would break the fragile spell around us. Instead, I closed my eyes, savoring the closeness, the safety of his arms. I wished the moment could last forever. When he finally pulled back, his hand lingered on my arm, his eyes searching mine. There was something unspoken in his gaze. He smiled before I could find words, his open, kind face easing any tension. "Breakfast's gonna burn," he said softly, his tone carrying the weight of the moment. I laughed quietly, stepping aside as he returned to the stove. "Can't have that," I said, my heart still racing from the dance, the embrace, the kiss on my cheek. I watched him, unable to look away. Something had changed, either in Lucas or in me. The pull between us was undeniable, our bond deepening in ways I hadn't expected. At the breakfast table, the humor returned. We talked easily about everything and nothing, but something new lingered beneath a tenderness of vulnerability. His fingertips brushed mine too long as he reached across to wipe a crumb from my lip. His touch sent a shiver through me, and I knew we were venturing into uncharted territory. I wasn't sure I wanted to turn back, but there was no going back now.